A heartless millionaire crosses paths with three abandoned triplets, and what they do changes his life forever. The reflection in the mirror of the private elevator showed a flawless man in his tailor-made Italian suit. Jack Miller straightened his grey silk tie, a mechanical movement he repeated every morning before starting another day at the empire he had built. The Patek Philippe on his wrist showed exactly 6:45, neither a minute earlier nor a minute later. At 45, every second of his life was timed with surgical precision. The doors slid open soundlessly on the 50th floor of the Miller Tower, and his footsteps echoed through the empty hallway. He was always the first to arrive and the last to leave. The firm click of his shoes on the Italian marble floor was his only companion at that hour, just the way he preferred it. The building itself seemed to awaken with his arrival, lights turning on automatically as he walked, as though recognizing their master. Mr. Miller, Sarah, his assistant for 5 years, was already at her desk. She was the only one who had lasted that long, mainly because she understood that efficiency was the only currency he valued. Not a single smile passed between them. Sarah had learned in her first week that showing emotion was about as welcome as a computer virus. Schedule. The word came out like a command as he walked straight to his office. The aroma of premium coffee lingered in the air, not for pleasure, but because studies proved that caffeine increased productivity by 12%. Meeting at 7:30 with the board regarding the Tech Solutions acquisition. At 9:45, conference call with the Chinese investors. At 11:00, a review of the quarterly reports. At 2:00 p.m., a meeting with the lawyers about New Energy Inc. At 4:30, Jack was no longer listening. His eyes scanned the figures on his computer screen, analyzing the overnight fluctuations in the Asian market. A cold smile formed on his lips when he saw that his predictions had been correct. Another company would fall into his hands for a fraction of its real value. The phone rang once. "Your sister online too, sir." "Busy." The response was automatic, just like the previous 15 attempts she had made over the past 3 months. Clara never understood that emotions were luxuries he could not afford. For a moment, a vision intruded on his mind. A little girl with pigtails holding his hand, as they both watched their parents' coffin being lowered into the ground. He was 12, she was only 6. The tightness in his chest lasted just 1 second before being buried under layers of ice cultivated over decades. On the wall of his office, a single black and white photo showed a Victorian mansion covered in snow, the orphanage where he had spent 6 years before gaining emancipation at 17. It was there he learned his most valuable lesson. Trusting emotions was the fastest route to failure. Within those cold walls, he lived enough to know that compassion was just another word for weakness. The morning advanced like a meticulously planned chess match, each move calculated, each decision analyzed with icy detachment. During the board meeting, his presence was like an icy wind that froze any attempt at argument. "The employee representative from Tech Solutions is here, sir. He wants to discuss the layoff plan." Sarah interrupted his thoughts with her trademark clinical efficiency. "I don't receive employees." His voice carried no hesitation. "Send him to HR and prepare the documents for the New Energy Inc. acquisition. I want everything ready by the end of the day. But, sir, they haven't accepted the purchase offer yet." A faint smile crossed his face, cold as a winter morning. "They will. By the end of the week, their stock will drop 40%. I've taken care of that." From his desk, he could see the entire city he had once sworn to conquer. The smaller buildings seemed to bow before the Miller Tower, just as their owners had eventually bowed at his feet over the years. Each window reflected the rising sun, like thousands of eyes admiring his empire. In the locked drawer of his desk, a yellowed newspaper clipping showed a smiling family in front of a small convenience store. His parents, proud of their little business, had no idea they would become the victims of a botched robbery just 3 months after that photo was taken. Jack never smiled like that again, never truly smiled at all. The hours dissolved into an endless sequence of meetings and decisions. In each, Jack Miller was the personification of corporate efficiency. There was no room for hesitation or pity in the world he had chosen to inhabit. His reputation preceded him. the man who had turned a small initial investment into a multi-billion-dollar empire in less than 2 decades. At lunch, always at exactly 1 p.m., he ate alone in his office while reviewing reports. Food, selected by his assistant following a rigid diet calculated for maximum cognitive performance, was merely fuel. The pleasure of a meal was one of the many luxuries he had abandoned on his way to the top. The afternoon dragged on in a succession of numbers, charts, and projections. Each decision was made with the coldness of a computer processing data. It didn't matter how many lives would be affected. In the end, it all came down to numbers on a spreadsheet. "It's your nephew's birthday today, sir," Sarah commented, handing him another stack of documents. "Your sister left an invitation." The invitation went straight to the trash. Jack didn't need to say anything. His gesture spoke volumes. In his world, there was no room for birthday parties or children's laughter. Every minute wasted on sentimentality could cost millions. When night fell upon the city, Jack remained in his office, his eyes fixed on the lights punctuating the darkness outside. Somewhere, his sister was probably tucking in nephews he had never met. Elsewhere in the city, hundreds of Tech Solutions employees were likely having sleepless nights, fearing for their future. The clock read 10:30 p.m. when he finally rose from his desk. The building was completely silent, except for the faint hum of computers. While descending in the private elevator, his reflection in the mirror was the same as in the morning: immaculate, unwavering, untouchable. His driver was already waiting with the door of the Rolls-Royce open. During the ride to his penthouse, Jack mentally reviewed the day's events, calculating gains and losses with machine-like precision. To him, that was success, positive numbers, an expanding empire, absolute control. But that wasn't his problem. In the world of business, there was room only for the strongest, and Jack Miller had become not just strong, but invincible, even if it meant turning his heart to ice. 3 small silhouettes stood out against the orange sky at sunset, seated on the old swing in the yard of Hope's Haven Orphanage. The triplets Emily, Olivia, and Sophia shared not only the same angelic face and honey-colored hair, but also a secret that kept them united like beads on the same necklace. "Look, a shooting star." Olivia pointed to the sky, her eyes shining as brightly as the stars that began to dot the firmament. Her sketchbook, always on her lap, was filled with stars and constellations that she imagined told secret stories. "There are 3 of them," Emily jumped up, naturally taking the leadership role she always held among her sisters. "Just like us. Let's make a wish." Her determined gaze was already fixed on the horizon, as if she could see beyond it the future she dreamed of for her sisters. Sophia, the most sensitive of the 3, held her sister's hands tightly. "Together," she whispered, "like we promised." A silent tear rolled down her cheek as she closed her eyes to make her wish. It had been exactly 1 year since they arrived at the orphanage. The memory of that rainy night still haunted their dreams. Their mother, with red eyes and trembling hands, leaving them at the door with only a small suitcase and 3 identical teddy bears. "Mommy will be back," she had promised, but the seasons changed 4 times, and she never returned. In the dorm shared with 6 other girls, the triplets had created their own world. They pushed their 3 beds together, forming a perfect triangle where they whispered their secrets and fears under the dim glow of a bedside lamp every night. Emily, the oldest by exactly 2 minutes, was the guardian of her sisters. She was the one who organized the Star Council, as they called their nightly meetings. With a courage that seemed too big for her 5 years, she faced anyone who dared to bother her sisters. "No one will ever separate us," Emily repeated every night like a mantra. "We are a constellation. Stars have to stay together to tell a story." Olivia lived in a world of her own, populated by magical creatures she drew in her worn-out sketchbook. Her colorful drawings adorned the dormitory walls, bringing life to the darkest corners of the orphanage. She was the one who created fantastic tales to make her sisters smile on difficult days. "Look," Olivia said, opening to her newest page, "I drew us 3 as guardian fairies. Each one protects a special wish of the world's children." Sophia, the youngest by 4 minutes, had a gift for sensing other people's pain. She was the one who noticed when another child at the orphanage was sad, quietly approaching to offer a hug or share one of the cookies she saved from breakfast. Her natural kindness made her a favorite among the caregivers. Mornings at the orphanage followed a strict routine. Wake up at 6:30, make their beds and have breakfast in the noisy cafeteria. Emily always made sure her sisters looked presentable, straightening their donated clothes with motherly care. In the makeshift school in the orphanage's basement, each triplet stood out in her own way. Emily led study groups. Olivia mesmerized everyone with her stories in language class, and Sophia was the first to help classmates who struggled. The three little stars, as they were affectionately called by Mrs. Martha, the orphanage cook, seemed to have the gift of brightening even the grayest days in that place. Even when couples interested in adoption came by, showing interest in only one of them, the answer was always the same, spoken in unison: "We're a complete package." At night, while the other children slept, the triplets gathered in their improvised tent made of sheets, lit by the flashlight Emily had managed to fix. There, Olivia would draw her dreams, Sophia would share her deepest feelings, and Emily would plan their future together. One day, Emily whispered on that special night of shooting stars, "We'll have our own house, with a garden full of flowers for Sophia to care for, an art studio for Olivia, and a huge library," Olivia chimed in, her eyes sparkling with imagination, "with all the stories in the world. And lots of hugs," Sophia added softly, "so we never feel cold in our hearts again." The three hugged beneath the starry sky, their small hearts beating in unison. A gentle breeze swayed their identical hair, as if nature itself wanted to share that moment of unity. "Promise again," Sophia pleaded, extending her pinky. "We promise to always be one," they replied in chorus, their fingers intertwined like the roots of an ancient tree. In the silent dormitory, long after all the lights were out, three small stars continued to shine. Emily, planning the future; Olivia, drawing dreams in her mind; and Sophia, sending silent love to all the other sleeping children. And so another day ended at Hope's Haven Orphanage, where three little stars awaited the moment to shine with all their intensity, united by the strongest bond that exists, the love between sisters. The night was especially cold that December, with a dense fog that turned the city lights into golden blurs. Jack Miller was driving his Rolls-Royce himself, something he did only when he needed to think. The New Energy Inc. contract was practically closed, another victory for his empire. But something was bothering him, a strange feeling he couldn't name. That was when three small shadows suddenly appeared in front of his car. The tires screeched on the wet pavement as he slammed on the brakes. The car skidded, stopping inches away from three identical girls huddled together in the middle of the street, their eyes wide like deer caught in headlights. "What the hell?" Jack got out of the car, anger bubbling in his veins. The fog enveloped the scene like a ghostly veil, and for a moment he thought he might be hallucinating. Three perfectly identical faces stared at him, an odd mix of fear and defiance in their expressions. "It was my fault," said the one in the middle, stepping forward protectively in front of the others. "I said we could cross." Her small voice carried a surprising strength. Jack noticed their worn backpacks, clothes far too thin for that part of the city, and the way they stood together like a tiny defensive circle, runaways. His business instincts rarely misread people. "Where are your parents?" he demanded, his voice sharper than intended, echoing on the deserted street. "We don't have any," answered the same girl, Emily, as he would later find out. "And we're not going back to the orphanage." Her eyes sparkled with determination. The word orphanage hit Jack like a punch in the stomach. For a moment, he was transported back to his own past. The same cold bore, the same sense of abandonment, the same desperation to run away. "Emily," whispered one of the others, the one clutching a sketchbook to her chest. "I'm cold." Her lips trembled, but her eyes remained fixed on Jack, as if trying to decipher him. The third girl, who had been silent until then, took a hesitant step toward him. "You were alone once too, weren't you?" Her voice was soft, but her words pierced through the layers of ice Jack had built over the years. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the first raindrops began to fall. Jack looked at his watch, 11:47 p.m. In a few hours, he had a crucial meeting that would define the future of hundreds of jobs. He had no time for this. It wasn't his problem. "Get in the car," he heard himself say before he could stop the words. "I'll take you back." "No." Emily clutched her sister's hands. "We promised to stay together. At the orphanage, they want to separate us. They've tried 3 times. The rain intensified, and Jack found himself at a crossroads that didn't appear on any of his risk assessment spreadsheets. The girls were now visibly shaking, their thin clothing soaked. "Get in the car," he repeated, his voice softer this time. "I won't take you back." "Not yet." The 3 exchanged looks, having one of those silent conversations only siblings can have. It was the girl with the sketchbook who moved first, pulling the others along with her. The luxurious interior of the Rolls-Royce had never seemed so out of place. The girls huddled in the back seat, 3 tiny bursts of color and chaos in his meticulously ordered world. "I'm Olivia," said the one with the sketchbook, breaking the tense silence. "And I like your car. It looks like a spaceship." "Sophia," mumbled the one who had studied him with eyes that seemed to see through his facade. "Emily," the leader added, still wary. "We're triplets, and we never get separated. Ever." Jack watched them through the rearview mirror, feeling his organized world begin to crumble. There was something about those 3 identical pairs of eyes that deeply unsettled him. Maybe it was Emily's determination, so similar to his own at that age, or the dreamy creativity in Olivia's eyes, reminding him of long-forgotten dreams, or worse, the silent understanding in Sophia's gaze, as though she could see right through the walls he had built around his heart. "Sir?" Sophia's voice cut through his thoughts. "Your tie is crooked." Instinctively, Jack's hand went to his tie, a gesture he repeated dozens of times a day, but this time he felt strangely exposed. "Do you have a home?" Olivia asked, already scribbling something in her rain-soaked sketchbook. "With a garden." "A penthouse," he answered curtly, wondering why he was even responding. "Like a princess tower." Olivia's eyes sparkled. "No princesses," Jack snapped, but his voice lacked its usual chill. Emily remained silent, but her keen eyes studied Jack's every move, every detail of the car, as though piecing together a plan in her mind. Jack's phone buzzed, probably Sarah, with last-minute details about the next morning's meeting. For the first time in his adult life, he didn't answer immediately. The rain continued outside, creating a curtain that isolated that moment from the rest of the world. Jack Miller, the man who had built an empire on cold, calculated decisions, found himself doing something entirely irrational. He drove toward his penthouse, taking with him 3 little runaways who had just collided with his perfectly ordered world. In the back seat, Olivia was already asleep, her sketchbook clutched to her chest. Sophia fought off slumber, her heavy eyelids opening and closing like flickering stars. Only Emily stayed alert, watching over her sisters like a tiny sentinel. Jack adjusted the rearview mirror, and for a moment, his eyes met Emily's. It was like looking into a mirror that reflected not his present self, but his past. All the determination, all the pain, all the need to protect those he loved. And for the first time in decades, he felt a tiny crack form in the icy surface of his heart. The decision to take the girls back to the orphanage came after a sleepless night in his penthouse. Jack stayed in his office while the 3 slept in the never-before-used guest room. The distant sound of their soft breathing seemed to echo through the empty corridors, disturbing the meticulously cultivated silence of his fortress. 3 times during the night, he found himself walking to their door just to check if they were still there, behavior he couldn't rationally explain. "Why do you live alone in such a big place?" Olivia's question over breakfast caught him off guard. The 3 were sitting at his dining table, also never used, eating cereal his housekeeper had hurriedly bought. The morning sun poured in through the tall windows, illuminating 3 curious pairs of eyes, that seemed to absorb all the formality of the room. "Because I like silence," he answered curtly, scanning through his emails on his phone, trying to maintain his usual routine. "But too much silence makes your heart echo, doesn't it?" Sophia asked softly, her large eyes staring at him with unsettling intensity. Jack lowered his phone, feeling oddly exposed. "Hearts don't echo." "Yes, they do," Olivia insisted, drawing something on a napkin. "Look, I drew yours. It has so much empty space it makes an echo. And here," she pointed to one corner of the drawing, "is where smiles could live, but it's all covered in ice." The drawing showed a giant heart inside a tower, surprisingly accurate for a 5-year-old. Jack folded the napkin and placed it in his suit pocket, a gesture he himself did not understand. His hands, so steady when signing multi-million-dollar contracts, trembled slightly. Emily watched everything in silence, her sharp eyes noting every move, every hesitation. "You're afraid," she declared suddenly. "I'm not afraid of anything," Jack replied automatically, though his voice sounded less convincing than he would have liked. "Yes, you are," Emily persisted, "afraid of liking us." The Rolls-Royce pulled up in front of Hope's Haven Orphanage shortly after. The Victorian-style building rose against the grey sky like a ghost of Jack's own past. He shivered involuntarily. How many orphanages looked exactly like this? The same iron gate, the same tall windows, the same forced cheer trying to hide the loneliness. "We don't want to go in," Emily said, her small hand gripping her sister's firmly. The winter sun cast 3 perfectly aligned tiny shadows on the ground. "You don't have a choice," Jack replied, but his voice betrayed a hesitation he wasn't used to feeling. His eyes roamed over the building, noticing every detail in need of repair: the loose gutter, the damp stains on the walls, the rusty swing in the yard. "Were you our age when you were alone?" Sophia's question hit him like a blow to the stomach. 12, he answered before he could stop himself. "I was older than you." "Then you understand," Emily looked at him intently. "You understand why we can't let them separate us. Did you have someone to hold your hand?" The question echoed in his mind, bringing back memories he had tried to keep locked away. His sister Clara, so small at the time, being taken by another family while he screamed, promising he'd find her. Jack looked more carefully at the orphanage. The yard, though well tended, showed signs of limited resources. The old windows let in the cold, and some roof tiles needed replacing. His business-trained eye automatically calculated the cost of a complete renovation. In the playground, other children began to appear, their curious eyes fixed on the luxurious car and the impeccably dressed man. A middle-aged woman hurried out the main door, wearing a white apron stained with colorful paint. "My little stars." She hugged all 3 girls at once, and Jack noticed how they relaxed in her embrace. "We were so worried. Where were you?" "I found them in the street," Jack heard himself say. "I thought it best to bring them back." His hands unconsciously searched for the napkin in his pocket. The woman regarded him with a mix of gratitude and curiosity. "I'm Martha, the caregiver, and you are—" "Miller, Jack Miller." The name sparked a flicker of recognition in her eyes. "The Jack Miller? From Miller Enterprises." Martha looked momentarily impressed, but quickly returned her attention to the girls. "Come on, let's go inside. It's cold out here." "No!" Emily clung to Jack's leg, startling him. The warmth of her small body against the fine fabric of his suit pants caused a strange, almost painful sensation. "Will you promise they won't separate us?" Jack felt something strange in his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced in decades. "What do you mean, separate?" Martha sighed, worry evident in her tired eyes. "There's a couple interested in adopting, but they can only take one of the girls. We've tried to explain they're inseparable, but impossible." The word left Jack's mouth with surprising force. "They're triplets." His hands clenched into fists, a gesture he usually saved for tough negotiations. "Unfortunately, Mr. Miller, not everyone has the means to—" "How much?" Jack heard himself ask, his voice shifting to the tone he used for deals. "I beg your pardon." How much would it cost to keep all three together? Renovations, care, education. His brain was already calculating numbers, turning emotion into something he could manage, business. Martha blinked, confused. Well, we always need donations, but... Jack pulled out his phone, ignoring the dozens of unread messages. Sarah, cancel my appointments this morning and contact our corporate social responsibility team. I want a full assessment of Hope's Haven Orphanage's needs. Immediately. Olivia jumped for joy, nearly dropping her sketchbook. Are you going to be our guardian angel? The word angel sounded strange to Jack's ears. Over the years, he had been called many things. A shark, a predator, the Iceman, but never an angel. The title felt too good, too heavy for someone like him. I'm just making sure you have what you need, he said, straightening his tie in a nervous gesture he hadn't done in years. Sophia stepped closer, gently taking his hand. Her touch was warm, contrasting with the coldness he carried inside. Your heart is beating faster, she said plainly. The ice is starting to melt. Jack pulled his hand away, unsettled. He needed to leave, go back to his world of numbers and contracts, where there was no place for emotions. But something held him, maybe Emily's determined gaze, so similar to his own, or Olivia's imaginative spark, or Sophia's disturbing intuition. I can visit, he found himself saying, to make sure the money is well spent. It was an excuse, and for the first time in his adult life, he didn't care that his intentions were transparent. The three smiled in unison, and for a moment Jack's cold, calculated world felt less solid. Promise, they asked together. Jack Miller did not make promises. Promises were for the weak, for the sentimental. He made contracts, agreements, deals. But standing there before three identical pairs of eyes, the words slipped out, I promise. On the drive back to the city, his mind tried to rationalize what had just happened. It was just a social investment, he told himself. Good PR for the company. Tax deductions. But Olivia's napkin drawing seemed to burn in his pocket, and he couldn't shake the memory of Sophia's touch on his hand. In the rearview mirror, he saw the three waving at him, and something inside, something that had slept for decades under layers of ice, began to stir. For the first time in decades, Jack Miller felt fear. Not the kind measured in risk spreadsheets, but a deeper, more primitive fear, the fear of starting to feel again. Visits to the orphanage became part of Jack's routine, though he refused to admit it to himself. He always found a professional excuse to supervise renovations, check resource allocation, or hold meetings with the administrators. But his eyes invariably sought out three little identical figures as soon as he arrived. Are you happy? Emily asked one day during such a visit, while he pored over cost spreadsheets in the director's office. She sat across from him, her legs swinging from a chair too big for her. I'm successful, he answered automatically, without looking up from the numbers. That's not what I asked. The firmness in her voice made him raise his head. Does success make you smile inside it too? Jack frowned, unsettled by the question. He realized he didn't know the answer. When was the last time he felt anything close to genuine happiness? I have everything I need, he diverted, returning to his papers. Except smiles, Emily persisted. And hugs, and bedtime stories, and hot chocolate on rainy days. She tilted her head, studying him. Are you afraid of wanting those things? Before he could respond, Olivia burst into the room, clutching her sketchbook to her chest as usual. I finished, she announced triumphantly, running over to Jack. Finished what? He asked, secretly relieved by the interruption of Emily's interrogation. Your portrait, but not the one you are now, the real one, without the ice mask. Jack took the drawing with hesitant hands. On the paper, a man who vaguely resembled him was smiling. A wide, genuine smile that reached his eyes. Small stars danced around him, and his usual suit was replaced by casual clothes. I look nothing like this, he said, but his voice wavered slightly. Not yet, Olivia smiled, but you will. Sophia says it's already starting. As though summoned by her name, the third triplet entered the room. But something was wrong. Her usually rosy face looked pale, and she was swaying slightly. "Sophia!" Jack stood up instinctively, catching her just as she stumbled. "It's hot," she murmured, her eyes feverish, "and the world is spinning." For the first time in years, Jack Miller acted without calculating consequences. He scooped Sophia into his arms, shocked at how small and fragile she felt. "Martha," he called, his voice betraying his concern. "She needs a doctor." "The nearest clinic won't open until tomorrow," Martha said, rushing over. "Unacceptable." Jack was already heading for the door, Sophia secure in his arms. Emily and Olivia followed him like tiny shadows. "I'll take her to the best hospital in the city." In the car, Sophia rested her head against his chest, and Jack felt something strange, an instinct to protect he hadn't known he possessed. Emily and Olivia held their sister's hands, forming a circle of love that, in some inexplicable way, included him. "Are you scared?" Sophia asked quietly, even in her fever sensing others' emotions. "No," he lied, surprised to find his hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel. At the hospital, his influence opened every door. Within minutes, Sophia was being examined by the best pediatrician in the city. Jack waited in the corridor, unable to focus on work for the first time in his adult life. "You seem different," Emily said, never taking her eyes off him. "How so?" "Your tie has been crooked for half an hour, and you haven't noticed." Jack instinctively reached for his tie but stopped halfway, realizing she was right. When exactly had his priorities begun to change? Sitting on the floor, Olivia drew furiously in her sketchbook. "I'm drawing the sickness going away," she explained. "Lots of happy colors to chase off the fever." 3 hours later, when the doctor announced it was just a bad flu and Sophia would be fine, Jack felt something unfamiliar on his face. Olivia let out a gasp of surprise. "You're smiling." A real smile. Jack touched his own lips, astonished. He couldn't remember the last time he had smiled without professional motives. The next day, his assistant Sarah noticed subtle changes. The boss, who was never late, showed up 10 minutes behind schedule. His favorite tie was replaced by one with tiny stars, a gift the triplets had chosen at the hospital gift shop. And, even more surprising, he asked about her son for the first time in 5 years. In the boardroom, executives exchanged puzzled glances when Jack suggested adding a daycare to the new corporate building project. During a particularly tense negotiation, he shocked everyone by considering the family impact of layoffs before making a decision. That night, in his penthouse, Jack found himself looking at the stars for the first time in decades. Olivia's drawing was framed on his desk, not the one he used for work, but a new one set near the window, where the sunlight could reach it. His phone buzzed with a message from Martha, a photo of the triplets sleeping, Sophia in the middle, her sisters protecting her as always. Below the photo was a text. "They asked for you." Jack Miller, the man who had built his empire on numbers and coldness, found himself smiling again. In his chest, where once there was only ice, small seeds of change began to sprout. He picked up his phone and, for the first time in months, called his sister Clara. "Can we talk?" His voice sounded different, even to himself. "About everything." On the other end, his sister made a surprised sound. Somewhere in the back of his mind, Jack heard Sophia's voice. "See? The ice really is melting." And for the first time in his adult life, that possibility didn't scare him quite so much. Jack stared at the stack of documents on his desk with an expression his executives knew well, the look of a predator that had just found wounded prey. Numbers didn't lie. Hope's Haven orphanage was sinking in debt. 3 months, tops, before they'd have to shut their doors. "Sarah?" His voice broke the silence in his office. "Bring me the orphanage's full reports from the last 5 years. Everything. Donations, expenses, payroll." His eyes ran down the lines of red figures as his calculating mind kicked into gear. The building itself was worth a fortune. Prime location, large lot. Any developer would pay millions to turn it into luxury condos. "What are you looking at?" Emily's voice surprised him. She was standing at the door, a tiny, determined figure in a donated dress. "How did you—" Jack frowned, confused by her presence. "Martha brought us here to say thank you for fixing the playground," she explained, approaching his desk. Her sharp eyes fell on the documents. "Those numbers look sad." Instinctively, Jack covered the papers. "How would you know?" "Because you have the same face you did when Sophia was sick." Emily tilted her head, studying him. "Is the orphanage sick too?" Before he could answer, Olivia and Sophia ran in, their faces aglow with childlike joy. Olivia was holding a new drawing, a bright, cheerful scene of the newly renovated playground full of laughing children. "Look, it's Uncle Jack." Olivia held out the picture. It was the first time one of them called him that, and something in his chest tightened. "I drew everyone happy in the new playground." Sophia, always attuned to others' feelings, silently approached. "Something's wrong," she said simply, her eyes fixed on the papers on the desk. "The numbers are hurting you." Jack looked at the three girls, then back at the documents. His business instinct screamed one simple solution: let the orphanage go under, buy the property for a fraction of its value, profit millions on a new development. That was how he'd built his empire, finding opportunities, ignoring sentimentality. "What happens when a place runs out of money?" Emily asked, her small but resolute voice echoing in the room. "It closes," he answered automatically. Years of business coldness condensed into a single word. The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia clutched her sketchbook tighter, as if it could protect her. Sophia took her sister's hands. Emily kept her gaze on Jack, eyes reflecting an understanding beyond her years. "And where do the children go?" Emily pressed. "Other orphanages," Jack answered, his voice faltering. "They'd be separated, most likely, depending on available space." "Like you and your sister?" Sophia asked softly. The question hit Jack hard. Memories of his childhood flooded back. Clara's screams as she was taken away, years of loneliness, the ice that had begun to form in his heart that day. Quietly, Olivia began drawing on the back of one of the financial reports. Over the red numbers, 3 little stars took shape, connected by golden lines. "Stars can't stay alone," she explained as she drew. "They need to form constellations to tell stories." Jack looked at his phone. He had 3 important meetings that afternoon, deals worth millions. Then he looked at the triplets, 3 little stars who had somehow begun melting the ice in his heart. "Sarah," he called his assistant again, a tone in his voice she had never heard before, "cancel my commitments this afternoon and call an emergency meeting with our corporate social responsibility team and legal department first thing tomorrow." Emily grinned, a smile that reminded him of his own whenever he sealed a winning deal. "You're going to help the orphanage." "I'm going to do more than that," he said, picking up the phone. "I'm going to save it." The next hours were a whirlwind of calls and decisions. Jack Miller, the man known for destroying companies, was using all his power and influence to save an orphanage. He tapped his banking connections to restructure debts. He mobilized his political contacts to expedite processes. His legal team was ordered to set up a foundation. "Why?" Sophia asked while watching him work, her small hands toying with a pen from his desk. "Because some things are more important than money," he said, surprising himself with the sincerity in his voice. Olivia continued to draw, now filling the margins of every financial report with tiny interlinked stars. "You're making the building's heart warm again," she commented, not taking her eyes off her artistic work. When Martha came to pick the girls up, she found something she never expected to see. Jack Miller, the feared business shark, sitting on the floor of his $1 million office, studying a financial plan while Olivia decorated it with stars. Sophia rested her head on his shoulder, and Emily pointed seriously at the numbers, asking surprisingly insightful questions. "They have to go now," Martha announced quietly, almost reluctant to break the scene. Jack stood, smoothing his suit in an automatic gesture. But something was different. His tie remained crooked, there was glitter on his pants, and a subtle smile played at his lips. "I'll start implementing changes tomorrow," he told Martha. "Hope's Haven Orphanage isn't going to close." "You have my word. And promises can't be broken," Emily said solemnly. because they live in the heart, not on paper. As he watched the triplets leave, Jack realized he had made a decision that couldn't be explained by spreadsheets or graphs. For the first time in his adult life, he was acting with his heart, not his calculator. The Miller Enterprises boardroom had never witnessed anything like it. Jack Miller, known for his relentless presentations on hostile takeovers and corporate restructuring, now showed slides about an orphanage. His executives exchanged confused looks as he detailed the plan to renovate and revamp Hope's Haven Orphanage. "We need strategic partners." His voice retained its usual professional tone, but something different shone in his eyes. "Each group company will contribute its expertise. Treat this with the same priority as our biggest projects." During the break, his phone buzzed with a message from Martha, a photo of the triplets on the new swing he'd had installed, their smiles lighting up the screen. For the first time, Jack smiled during an executive meeting. "Mr. Miller," Sarah found him studying the photo. "The bank president called about that downtown property." "Tell him I'm not interested," he replied, surprising his assistant. It was a multi-million-dollar opportunity, the kind of deal that used to excite him beyond measure. "We have other priorities now." At the orphanage, changes were beginning to show. The group's construction company started structural repairs. The tech division installed new computers. The food subsidiary improved the kitchen supply. "You're building a constellation," Olivia observed as she watched him working on his laptop in the orphanage yard, connecting different stars to make something beautiful. Jack looked up from a complex donation spreadsheet. "What do you mean?" "All these companies," she pointed to the Miller Enterprises logo on his screen, "they're like different stars you're bringing together to help our home." Emily, playing nearby with other children, approached. "Why are you doing all this?" The question caught him off guard. Why indeed? It wasn't just business. There were far more profitable ways to invest his time and money. It wasn't publicity. He was keeping everything low profile. "Because," he began, realizing he didn't know how to finish the sentence. "Because your heart told you to," Sophia finished softly, appearing by his side as she often did. "And you finally decided to listen." A younger child fell nearby, beginning to cry. Before anyone else could react, Jack found himself rising to help. He picked the little girl up, his hands, accustomed to handling contracts, now gently wiping away tears. "I didn't know you knew how to do that," Martha commented, smiling. "Neither did I," he admitted honestly. That night, in his penthouse, Jack reviewed the day's numbers. Not the stock market or pending acquisitions, but the orphanages. Every cent invested was personally tracked, every improvement carefully planned, surprising even himself. His phone rang. It was Clara, his sister. "Jackie," she used the childhood nickname he hadn't heard in decades. "I heard you're different now. That you're helping an orphanage." "Word gets around," he replied, without his usual aloofness. "It's those children, isn't it? They're melting all that ice." Jack glanced at his desk, where Olivia's latest drawing showed him surrounded by stars, with a smile on his face that was starting to feel less foreign in the mirror. "3 of them, especially," he admitted. The next day, during a surprise visit to the orphanage, he found Sophia teaching one of the younger children to read. He watched quietly, moved by her patience and gentleness in celebrating every correct word. "She has a special gift," Martha noted, walking up beside him. "All 3 of them do. Emily organizes the others like a little leader. Olivia brings joy with her art. They deserve more," Jack heard himself say. "All the children do." That was when he had the idea. Saving the orphanage wasn't enough. He had to turn it into a model. He grabbed his phone, ignoring the fact that it was past 9 at night. "Sarah, put together a proposal for expanding the project. I want to create an education fund, scholarships, comprehensive medical coverage, and schedule meetings with other orphanages in the city. We'll replicate this model." "Now?" his assistant asked, surprised by the late call. "Now. Some things can't wait." When he ended the call, he saw 3 sets of eyes watching him from the doorway. "So you're not leaving us again, are you?" Emily asked, a rare vulnerability in her strong voice. "No," he replied, surprised by his own certainty. "I'm not." Olivia ran to him, hugging his legs. After a moment's hesitation, Jack knelt down and, for the first time, properly returned the hug. Sophia and Emily joined in, and there, in the middle of an orphanage hallway, Jack Miller felt something both strange and wonderful, a sense of belonging. "Your heart's beating differently," Sophia whispered. "Warmer." Jack realized she was right. The ice that had kept everyone at a distance for so long was melting. Drop by drop, hug by hug, smile by smile. On his way home that night, he stopped at a toy store. He bought 3 identical teddy bears, not because he needed to, not because it was strategic, but simply because he wanted to see 3 identical smiles the next morning. His driver, who had served him for 15 years, watched in the rearview mirror at something he'd never seen before. Jack Miller, the Iceman, smiling to himself in the back seat, 3 teddy bears on the seat beside him. "You're throwing money away, Miller." The voice of Richard Bennett, his oldest business partner, cut through the quiet of the boardroom. "Orphanages. Foundations. What's gotten into you?" Jack gazed out at the city through the panoramic window, his reflection showing a man different from the one who had occupied that room months before. His tie, still impeccable, now had small embroidered stars, a gift from the Triplets. "I don't expect you to understand, Richard," he replied calmly. "But I do expect you to respect my decision. The board is worried. Your recent moves don't make sense. You've turned down 3 profitable acquisitions, cancelled mass layoffs, and now this." Richard shifted in his seat. "Some are saying you've lost your touch." A few months ago, words like that would have enraged Jack. Now they only caused mild irritation. "Show them last quarter's figures," he said. "Our profits are up. Employee satisfaction is up. Our public image has significantly improved." "It's not about the numbers, Jack, and you know it. It's about you. You're different." The meeting ended in tense deadlock. For the first time in his career, Jack felt the weight of his peers' distrust. In the private elevator, he loosened his tie, something that would have been unthinkable months ago. His driver was waiting, but instead of giving his penthouse address, Jack asked to go to the orphanage. He needed something, though he wasn't sure what. He found the Triplets in the yard, where Olivia was showing other children how to draw stars. When they saw him, their faces lit up in a way no business success had ever caused. "Uncle Jack!" Olivia ran to him, her sketchbook bouncing. "You came just in time. We're putting on a play." "A play?" "About an Ice King who learns to love," Emily explained, stepping up with a knowing look. "But he's afraid of melting." Jack felt a strange squeeze in his chest. How did they always see right through him? "You're sad," Sophia observed, taking his hand. "Are there people trying to freeze your heart again?" He found himself nodding, surprised by his own honesty. "Some think I'm changing too much." "You are," Emily agreed with wisdom beyond her years, "but for the better. Now you smile for real." Jack sat on a bench in the yard, and the 3 surrounded him like little guardians. Olivia started sketching. Emily voiced her thoughts aloud, and Sophia simply held his hand, silently offering comfort. "Want to know what I think?" Olivia held up her sketchbook, showing a new drawing, a man in a suit surrounded by ice that melted into flowers. "Sometimes we have to melt so beautiful things can grow. People are afraid of what they don't understand," Emily added with uncanny wisdom, "like when other kids were scared to play with us because we're triplets. But then, they got to know us," Sophia finished gently. "And saw that being different can be good." Jack looked around at the orphanage garden, now filled with new toys and happy children. He saw the computers through the window of the study room, the freshly painted walls, the budding vegetable patch, all because he dared to be different. "Uncle Jack," Olivia brought him back, "could you tell us a story today? We've never heard a bedtime story from a dad before." The word dad struck him like lightning. Memories of his own father, brief and precious, mixed with an unrecognized longing in his heart. "I don't know how to tell stories," he admitted, feeling vulnerable. "Everybody does," Emily insisted. "You just have to let your heart speak." And so Jack Miller, the feared businessman, found himself inventing a tale about three little stars who taught an entire constellation to shine in a new way. Later, in his penthouse, he discovered a drawing that Olivia had slipped into his pocket. It showed him with the three girls, and above them were the words, in a child's handwriting, "Our family." The word made him sink heavily into his armchair. Family. When was the last time he allowed himself to think about that possibility? He picked up his phone and, for the first time in years, called his sister not out of obligation, but because he needed to talk. "Clara," his voice betrayed emotion, "how did you know when you were ready to be a mother?" There was silence for a moment on the other end. "You're never completely ready, Jackie," she finally replied. "You just feel it in your heart." "What if I mess everything up?" The vulnerability in his voice surprised him. "Is that what you're feeling? Fear of being a father?" The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Jack looked at the drawing again, at those four figures under a starry sky. "They deserve more than an Iceman," he muttered. "But you're not that man anymore, are you?" Clara asked gently. "Children can do that to us. They make us want to be better." The next day, during another tense board meeting, Jack did something unprecedented. In the middle of a discussion about cost-cutting, he pulled out his phone and showed photos of the orphanage, the children, the improvements. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice had a new conviction, "I'm not throwing money away. I'm investing in the future, in people, in possibilities." "This isn't the Jack Miller we know," someone commented. "No," he agreed, a small smile on his lips. "It's someone better." That afternoon, arriving at the orphanage, he found the triplets working on their play. He watched in silence as Emily directed, Olivia painted the backdrop, and Sophia helped the shyer kids with their lines. "Do you want to join?" Martha asked, coming closer. "They've saved a special role for you." "Which role?" "The king who learns to love," she smiled. "They say you have experience with that." The family law attorney's office seemed oddly small to Jack Miller, accustomed to lavish corporate boardrooms. The attorney, Dr. Helena Santos, studied him with a mix of curiosity and skepticism as he laid out his situation. "Three children, Mr. Miller, at once?" She adjusted her glasses, scanning his profile in the system. "And you've never been married, correct?" "Correct." Jack kept his professional tone, as if negotiating another corporate acquisition, but his hands, unconsciously fiddling with a small drawing tucked in his jacket pocket, betrayed his anxiety. "You do realize multiple adoptions, especially of triplets, is an extremely complex process." Helena flipped through a stack of documents. "We'll need to prove you have not only the financial means, but also the emotional and psychological capacity to raise three children. Give me a list of everything I need. Time is of the essence." The attorney offered a faint smile. "Mr. Miller, this isn't like buying a company. You can't just accelerate the process with money or influence. We have to follow every step carefully." Later that day at the orphanage, Jack watched the triplets playing in the yard, still processing the lawyer's briefing. The list of requirements was long. Psychological evaluations, home visits, interviews, parenting classes, changes to his residence. "You're worried," Sophia observed, approaching quietly as always. "Your heart is making storm noises." Jack looked at her, surprised. He hadn't told the girls about his plans yet, afraid to raise hopes too soon. "How do you always know?" "Because now you let us see," she answered simply, sitting beside him. Emily and Olivia soon joined them, as if drawn by a silent call. Olivia held up a new drawing, this time 4 figures in front of a tall building. "It's your house," she explained, pointing, "but it's more colorful now. And there are more smiles." "Girl," Jack began, his voice softer than it had ever been in any negotiation, "I need to ask you something important." Emily straightened, always ready to lead. "Is it about separating us?" "No," he responded quickly, "never. It's the opposite." They all watched him intently, identical eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his newly thawed heart pound. "What if—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. What if we became a family? Officially. The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia dropped her sketchbook. Sophia gripped Emily's hand. "Do you want to be our dad?" Emily finally asked, her voice small but firm. "Yes." The word came easier than he expected. "But it's complicated. There are lots of rules, lots of paperwork." "Like when you saved the orphanage?" Emily interrupted, understanding flashing in her eyes. "Something like that, but harder. And it will take longer." "But you won't give up, right?" Olivia asked, already flipping open her sketchbook for a new drawing. "Because family is forever, isn't it?" "I won't give up," he promised, surprised at the strength in his own voice. The next morning, his penthouse was visited for the first time by a social worker. Jack had spent the night rearranging everything, transforming one of his offices into a colorful bedroom with 3 beds, following exact adoption guidelines. "Mr. Miller," the social worker, Mrs. Rodriguez, said, surveying the apartment with a keen eye, "why did you decide to adopt?" "And why 3 children?" Jack paused in front of the window, looking out at the city he once vowed to conquer. Now his ambitions felt so different. "I didn't choose 3 children," he answered honestly. "They chose me. They showed me there are things more important than profits and acquisitions." Mrs. Rodriguez jotted down notes on her clipboard. "You realize your entire routine will have to change. You'll have to be present, attend school meetings, deal with illnesses, nightmares." "I'm already changing," he replied, thinking about the meetings he'd cancelled, the nights spent researching child development, the smiles that now came more often than his once icy expressions. Back in his corporate office later, Sarah found him not studying contracts or financials, but books on parenting and child psychology. "Never thought I'd see the day," she remarked, placing more documents on his desk. "Neither did I," Jack admitted, signing the papers without taking his eyes off the book on childhood trauma. "Set up a meeting with HR. I need to discuss parental leave policies and flexible schedules." The process moved slowly. Each step brought new challenges, new forms, new interviews. Jack, used to having everything under control, found himself in uncharted territory. "How was the interview?" Clara asked over the phone after his second session with the court-appointed psychologist. "Different," he said, loosening his tie. He asked about our parents, about the orphanage, about feelings. "And how did you do talking about feelings?" "Better than a few months ago," he admitted. "The girls, they taught me a new language." At the orphanage, the triplets eagerly awaited his visits, now filled with new meaning. Olivia began a family book with drawings of the future she envisioned. Emily made lists of rules and promises, her way of creating structure. Sophia, with her unique sensitivity, seemed to sense every emotion Jack tried to hide. "The judge will like you," she stated one day, watching him fill out yet more paperwork. "How do you know?" "Because now your heart sounds like love, not ice." Martha, observing this daily transformation, offered quiet support. "They've never slept so well," she said one afternoon. "Hope is a wonderful pillow." The lawyers continued their work, navigating the complexities of multiple adoption by a single man. Jack surprised everyone by appearing personally at each preliminary hearing, his impeccably tailored suits now always featuring a small detail, star-patterned ties, a colorful pin, small signs of the changes in his life. "You're truly determined," a judge commented at one of the hearings. "They're my constellation," Jack replied simply, using Olivia's words. "And constellations need to stay together to tell their story." At night, in his penthouse now increasingly filled with drawings and small childish touches, Jack allowed himself to dream of the future. He imagined noisy breakfasts, homework at the dining table, 3 different voices calling him Dad. "Phase 1 complete," Dr. Helena announced after 2 months. "Now we begin longer supervised visits, weekend stays to see how everyone adapts." How long until the final decision? Impossible to say, but I've seen few cases with such dedication, Mr. Miller, and even fewer with so much evident mutual love. Jack placed Olivia's newest drawing in a special drawer just for their artwork. This one showed 4 hearts joined by golden lines, with the phrase, "Family is when love has a home." Gazing out his office window, he saw his reflection in the glass. The Iceman was gone, replaced by someone who now knew how to smile, who carried children's drawings along with million-dollar contracts, who told bedtime stories over the phone. Someone who, for the first time in his adult life, was not afraid to love. Chapter 13. A New Chapter. The snow fell softly outside the country house the day the judge finally signed the adoption papers. Pierre looked at Emma and Olivia, now officially his daughters, and saw in their eyes the same tears of joy he felt in his own. "So it's forever now?" Olivia asked, her small voice brimming with hope. "Forever," Pierre confirmed, kneeling to hug his daughters. "No one can ever separate us now." The judge smiled, setting aside his pen. In 30 years of service, few moments had been as gratifying. "Congratulations, Dubois family. Dubois family." The words echoed in Pierre's heart like music. 6 months had passed since that stormy night, and his life had been transformed in ways he never imagined possible. The country house, once an occasional escape from his business pressures, now overflowed with life, under the diligent care of the twins, even in winter. The garden had turned into a colorful paradise, with specially cultivated roses that bloomed in the snow. "Shall we show the judge what we did in our room?" Emma asked, tugging on Pierre's suit sleeve. The girls' room, once a simple guest room, was now a magical world. Pierre had let them decorate any way they pleased, and the result was breathtaking. Walls painted with a mural of flowers and stars, curtains that looked like cascades of light, and a tree painted from floor to ceiling, its branches covered with photos of their new family. "Sophie would have loved this," Madame Laurent said softly, entering with a tray of hot chocolate. Pierre nodded, watching his daughters proudly show every detail to the judge. Sophie was everywhere in that room, in the love for flowers, in the music the girls sang as they played, in the smiles that came more and more easily. The Sophie Lambert Foundation had opened its doors 2 months earlier, converting the old mansion into a support center for traumatized children. Pierre smiled, recalling the first time he took Emma and Olivia there. "It's like Mom is still helping children," Emma had observed, her eyes shining at the sight of classrooms, a library, therapy rooms. The transformation wasn't just physical. Pierre saw deep changes in his daughters every day. The nightmares, once frequent, were now rare. The twins, though still inseparable, were gradually exploring their own interests. Their smiles, once hesitant, now lit up the whole house. "Dad?" Olivia's voice pulled him back to the present. "Can we start decorating for Christmas?" Their first Christmas as a family. Pierre had planned everything meticulously, with enthusiastic help from Madame Laurent and the household staff. "Of course, my little one," he smiled. "In fact, I have a surprise in the attic." The girls' eyes grew wide. The attic had become a magical place, ever since Pierre began filling it with treasures specially chosen for them. After the judge left, the family headed upstairs. In one corner, covered by a sheet, were dozens of boxes of Christmas decorations, some new, others holding memories from generations of Dubois. "They belong to Grandma," Pierre explained, carefully opening an old box. She used to say each ornament told a story. The next hours were filled with joyful discoveries. Hand-blown glass ornaments that caught the light like diamonds, porcelain angels with serene expressions, garlands that seemed woven with golden thread. "Look, Dad," Emma exclaimed, holding a particularly beautiful angel. "She looks like Mom." Pierre took the angel carefully. Indeed, something about the figurine's serene smile reminded him of Sophie. "We'll give it a special place on the tree." Decorating the house turned into a celebration lasting days. Every room got its own festive touch, but the living room became the real centerpiece. A grand tree brushed the ceiling, its branches filled not only with old ornaments, but also with decorations the twins made themselves, including small family photos in handcrafted frames. On Christmas Eve, the country house looked unrecognizable. Soft lights glowed in every window. The smell of gingerbread filled the air, and laughter echoed through the halls. Pierre had invited everyone who had become crucial to their lives in recent months. Madame Laurence, of course, but also Inspector Rodriguez, Clara Mendes, Michel Laurent, and even Henri, who would finally meet the girls he had helped protect. Dinner was served amid stories and laughter. Emma and Olivia, wearing dresses specially chosen for the occasion, radiated happiness. Pierre watched it all with his heart overflowing, amazed at how his life had changed in only 6 months. "You know," Henri said during a quieter moment, "when you called me that first night, asking me to investigate the girl's background, I never imagined it would end like this." Pierre smiled, watching his daughters playing near the tree with Clara. "Neither did I. I thought I was just helping 2 frightened children. I didn't know I was finding my family." Later, after the guests left and the house quieted down, Pierre found the girls dozing on the library couch. The book they were reading was still open on their laps. Carefully, so as not to wake them, he sat between them as he had done so many nights. Emma and Olivia instinctively snuggled closer, even in their sleep. "Once upon a time," he whispered, picking up the story where they had left off, "there was a family who discovered that real love can be born on the darkest nights." The words flowed softly as the snow continued to fall outside. On the Christmas tree, the angel that resembled Sophie seemed to smile, its gentle glow illuminating the scene. Pierre thought about how his life had shifted since that stormy night. The once lonely businessman who lived only for work had been changed by the love of 2 little girls who desperately needed a father. And there, in the silent, festively decorated library, with his daughters asleep by his side and a storybook in his lap, Pierre Dubois finally understood the true magic of destiny. Sometimes you have to lose yourself in a storm to find your way home. Emma stirred in her sleep, mumbling something about angels and roses. Olivia smiled, as though she shared the same sweet dream. And Pierre, the man who once measured success in numbers on a bank statement, realized he had found true wealth, because now he understood family isn't just about blood ties, it's about choices made on stormy nights, about hearts that recognize each other despite time and distance, about love that heals wounds and builds bridges over chasms of pain. It's about 2 little girls who turned a house into a home, about a father who learned to love unconditionally, and about a mother whose love lives on in her daughter's smiles. The storybook closed softly on his lap, but Pierre knew that this tale, his tale, their tale, was only beginning. And it would be a story filled with love, laughter, flowers dancing in the wind, and above all else, family. Jack stayed awake the entire night, gazing at the city lights from his penthouse. The document on his desk, intent to adopt, awaited his signature. It was strange how that simple piece of paper intimidated him more than any multi-million-dollar contract he had ever signed. On the wall of his office, now decorated with Olivia's drawings, the progression of his transformation was recorded in colorful lines. The first portrait showed a man in shades of gray, alone in a tall tower. The latest drawing depicted 4 smiling figures surrounded by golden stars. "Sarah," he said over the intercom as the sun began to rise, "cancel my morning appointments. I need to go to the orphanage." He found the triplets at breakfast, their small forms bathed in the gentle morning light. Something in his expression must have revealed the importance of the moment, because all 3 immediately stopped what they were doing to look at him. "We need to talk," he said, sitting down with them. The words, so common in business negotiations, now carried a very different weight. "Is it about becoming our real family?" Emily asked directly, her sharp eyes studying his every reaction. Jack felt his heart, so long frozen, begin to race. "Yes, I want to make it official, legally." "So you mean you really want to be our dad?" Olivia was already reaching for her sketchbook, as though she had to record that moment. "If you'll have me," he replied, surprised by the vulnerability in his own voice. "It's a decision we need to make together." Sophia, who had been quiet until then, got up from her chair and walked over to him. Her small fingers touched his face gently. "Your heart is making a sound like a waterfall," she said softly. "Are you afraid of loving us too much?" Her question hit him harder than any boardroom confrontation ever had. That was exactly it. Not the fear of responsibility or commitment, but the fear of the intensity of the love he already felt for them. Maybe, he admitted, for the first time in his adult life allowing himself to show weakness. It's been so long since I let anyone into my heart. But we're already in, Emily declared, unwavering. Ever since that rainy night. Olivia turned her newest drawing toward him, still unfinished, but already showing 4 hearts joined by golden lines. A family isn't just about paper. It's when hearts form a constellation. Jack took the official document from his pocket and placed it on the small dining table. The formal lettering looked out of place in that setting of children's laughter and the scent of hot chocolate. "If I sign this," he explained, trying to keep his voice steady, "I'm telling the judge I want to be your father. Officially, forever." Forever is a long time, Emily reflected, with a maturity beyond her years. "Are you sure you won't get tired of us? Or miss the silence?" Olivia added. "Or want your heart back?" Sophia finished. Jack looked at each of them, Emily with her strength and leadership, Olivia with her creativity and cheer, Sophia with her quiet depth. How could he explain that they weren't taking up space in his heart, but rather returning it to life? "When I lost my parents," he began, surprised at his own willingness to share, "I promised I'd never let anyone get that close again. I built walls of ice around myself, thinking that was how I'd stay safe." The 3 watched him attentively, their identical eyes fixed on him. "But you," he continued, his voice wavering slightly, "you didn't break those walls. You did something much more special. You taught the ice to melt, showing me it's safe to feel warmth again." Olivia immediately began a new sketch, her pencils dancing across the paper. Emily took his hand, gripping it with surprising strength for someone so small. Sophia, with her unique sensitivity, simply laid her head on his shoulder. "So," Jack drew a deep breath, picking up his pen, the same one he used to sign his biggest contracts, "would you accept me as your father? Officially. Only if you promise one thing," Emily said solemnly. "What's that?" "That you'll let us keep melting your heart, even when it's hard. Even when you're scared," Olivia added. "Even when it hurts from loving so much," Sophia concluded. Jack felt something hot on his face, and to his shock, he realized they were tears, the first he had allowed himself in decades. "I promise," he said, voice trembling with emotion. With hands that, for the first time in his life, shook while signing a document, Jack Miller formalized his intent to adopt. The letters of his signature, normally so firm and measured, now danced slightly on the paper, as though they too were emotional. "Is it official now?" Olivia asked, holding up her new drawing, 4 hearts melting and blending into one shining constellation. "We still have a road ahead," Jack said, carefully putting the document away. "But this is the first official step. Like when you started smiling for real," Emily observed. "Or when you let us hug you," Olivia added. "Or when your heart started sounding like love," Sophia finished. Martha, who had been watching from a distance, came closer, eyes brimming with tears. "I never thought I'd see the day Jack Miller would cry at the orphanage breakfast table." Jack wiped his tears, unembarrassed. "Neither did I. But I also never expected to find 3 stars that would guide me back home." That night, in his penthouse, Jack did something he had never done before. He turned his formal living room into a blanket fort, following step-by-step instructions the girls had given him. Settling in there, surrounded by drawings, teddy bears, and dreams of the future, he picked up the phone to call Clara. "Have you signed?" she asked anxiously. "Yes," he said, looking out at the city through the gaps in the makeshift fort. "It's official. I'm trying to become a dad." "No, Jackie," Clara corrected him gently. "You already are a dad. The paper just proves what your heart already knows." And for the first time in his life, Jack Miller fell asleep smiling, dreaming not of acquisitions or profits, but of 3 little stars who had chosen his once-frozen heart to call home. The next day, in Dr. Helena Santos's office, an older woman walked in, carrying a worn folder and a worried expression. Linda Johnson, a former employee of Hope's Haven Orphanage, approached Jack, who was reviewing the last of his adoption documents, and the entire mood in the room shifted. "Mr. Miller," Linda began, her voice quivering slightly, "there's something you need to know about the triplets." "Something I've kept to myself all these years." Jack straightened in his chair, his business instinct sensing bad news. "What kind of information?" Linda opened the folder, yellowed with age, revealing documents and old photographs. "I was on duty the night they arrived. It didn't happen the way the official record says." The revelation landed like a bomb in the room. Dr. Helena, who had been observing in silence, moved closer to examine the documents. "The girl's mother," Linda continued, "didn't abandon them by choice. She was running away." Jack felt his heart, the one the triplets had helped thaw, clench. "Running from what?" "From whom?" Linda clarified, holding up an old photo. In it, a young woman held 3 babies, her expression a mix of love and fear. "The girl's father was a powerful, dangerous man. She ran away to protect them." Dr. Helena skimmed through the documents with growing concern. "This could complicate the process, Mr. Miller, if there are unresolved safety issues." "Let me finish," Linda said. "Their mother, Maria, made me promise I'd keep this secret until someone truly worthy came along to care for them, someone with enough power to protect them." Jack walked to the window, the city below carrying on its frenetic pace, unaware of the drama unfolding in that office. "Does their father know where they are?" "No," Linda answered. "Maria was very careful. She changed cities, altered documents, but—" She hesitated. "He's still looking for her. And if he ever finds out about the girls—" A heavy silence fell. Jack thought of the triplets, of Emily's fierce resolve, Olivia's bright creativity, Sophia's deep sensitivity. He thought of how they had transformed his life, melting the ice in his heart with unconditional love. "Does this change your decision?" Dr. Helena asked cautiously. Jack turned, his gaze falling on the scattered documents. "It changes everything," he said firmly, "but not in the way you think." Linda watched him closely. "What do you mean?" "Before, I wanted to adopt them because they taught me how to love again. Now," he picked up the photo of the young mother and her babies, "I have one more reason to protect them, to honor the sacrifice this woman made." "Mr. Miller," Dr. Helena interjected, "I must warn you, this could be dangerous. If that man finds out, then he'll find out the girls are no longer alone," Jack finished, his voice taking on the tone his executives recognized as unshakable. "They have a father now, and I'll use all my power and influence to keep them safe." Later, at the orphanage, Jack watched the triplets playing in the yard. Every movement, every smile now carried new meaning. He could see traces of Maria in their faces, the same determination shining in their eyes. "You're different today," Sophia remarked, slipping up quietly as she always did. "Your heart is making the sound of a storm and sunshine at the same time." "How can that be?" Jack asked, amazed by her perceptiveness. "Sometimes we need a storm to protect who we love," she said simply. "But love is like sunshine, always shining behind the clouds." Emily and Olivia joined them, each bringing her own special energy. Olivia proudly showed off her latest drawing, a family of stars protected by a gleaming shield. "You know I'd do anything to protect you, right?" Jack asked softly. "Oh, of course," Emily replied with her usual certainty. "You're already doing it. That's why your heart melted in the first place." Back in Dr. Helena's office, Jack signed a new set of documents, added security measures, private investigators, upgraded protection systems. "Are you sure about this?" the attorney asked one last time. "You can still back out." Jack took Olivia's latest drawing from his pocket, the one with the shining shield. "You know what the girls taught me? That sometimes love isn't just about feeling, it's about protecting. It's about fighting." Linda Johnson, who had remained quiet, smiled through her tears. Maria would be happy to know her girls found not just a father, but a guardian. That night, in his penthouse, Jack made changes to his will, reorganized his companies, and set up protective trusts. Each decision, each detail, was another stone in the wall he was building, not of ice like before, but of love and protection. His phone rang. It was Clara. "I heard the news," she said. "Jackie, are you sure?" "For the first time in my life," he replied, gazing at the city below. "I'm absolutely certain of something. They're not just my stars anymore, Clara. They're my mission." The next day, during another supervised visit, Jack observed the triplets with fresh eyes. They weren't just three tiny stars that had melted his frozen heart, but three precious treasures a brave mother had entrusted to fate, hoping someone worthy would find them. "Uncle Jack," Olivia called, extending a new drawing. "I drew our family with angel wings, because angels protect, right?" Jack took the picture, feeling his once icy heart expand with love and resolve. "Yes, my star, angels protect. And now you have one who will never, ever let anything bad happen to you." "Promise?" Emily asked, rare vulnerability shining in her eyes. "With all my heart," answered Jack Miller, a man once known for his coldness, but who now discovered a fierce buy's protective love beyond anything he'd ever felt. Thus, the final challenge did not become an obstacle, but a confirmation. The Iceman hadn't just melted, he had become a fortress of love, determined to protect the three little stars who had lit his way back to humanity. The courthouse was quiet that Thursday morning. Jack adjusted his star-patterned tie, the same one he'd worn on the day he declared his intention to adopt. Beside him, the triplets wore matching dresses in soft sky blue, chosen by Olivia to match the sky where the stars live. "Nervous?" he asked, his hands trembling slightly as he smoothed a stray lock of Sophia's hair. "No," Emily replied with her usual resolve. "We're already a family. The judge is just going to say what our hearts already know." Olivia clutched her sketchbook, now a complete album of their journey. On the first page was the Iceman in his solitary tower. On the last page, still fresh, were four figures smiling under a starry sky, with family written in golden letters. Judge Thompson entered, her kind eyes surveying the people gathered. Martha was there, as were Linda Johnson, Clara and her family, and even Sarah, who was seeing her boss openly display his emotions for the first time. "We're here today," Judge Thompson began, "to formalize what, from what I've observed in recent months, is already a family at heart." Jack felt Sophia squeeze his hand. Through her touch, he could feel the quickened pulse of his own heart, once made of ice, now brimming with love and hope. "Mr. Miller," the judge continued, "in all my years on the bench, I've rarely seen a transformation as profound as yours. Your files show not just practical changes, but a genuine revolution of spirit." Emily sat up straighter, pride shining in her eyes. Jack could have sworn he saw a small smile of satisfaction on her face. She had always believed this day would come. "And you, girls," the judge said, turning to the triplets, "do you have anything to say before I make the final decision?" Olivia stood first, her sketchbook in hand. "We made a book," she explained, her clear voice echoing in the room. "It shows how love melts ice and turns people into stars." Sophia was next. "His heart sounds like love now. Not storms, not ice, just love." Emily, the last to speak, stunned everyone with her simplicity. "He's already our dad. The paper is just for you to say so." Judge Thompson smiled, picking up the gold pen she reserved for special occasions. "Well then, let's have the paper say exactly that." The moment of signing seemed to happen in slow motion. Jack watched every stroke of the judge's pen, each word that made official what his heart had known for a long time. He was now a father to three little stars who had guided him back to his own humanity. "By the power vested in me," the judge declared, "I hereby declare the Miller family officially established. Emily, Olivia, and Sophia Miller are now, legally and irrevocably, your daughters." Their first embrace as an official family was a tangle of arms, tears, and laughter. Jack knelt to meet them at eye level, and they surrounded him just as they always did. Emily with her protective spirit, Olivia with her overflowing joy, Sophia with her profound connection. "Is it forever now?" Olivia asked, tears falling onto the drawing she held. "It's always been forever," Jack replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Ever since that rainy night." The celebration at Hope's Haven Orphanage that followed was a joyful blend of festivity and gratitude. Jack took the opportunity to announce the creation of the 3 Stars Foundation, aimed at supporting orphanages and streamlining the adoption process. "Because every child deserves the chance to melt someone's heart," he said, drawing emotional smiles from everyone present. Martha watched the scene, tears in her eyes. "When they arrived here, so small and frightened, I prayed they'd find not just a home, but a real love. I guess prayers are answered in surprising ways sometimes." Clara stepped over to her brother, watching her nieces play with the other children. "You know, Jackie, you finally kept your promise." "What promise?" "To keep your family together. You just had to wait for the right moment and the right people." That night, back at home, his penthouse now truly a home, filled with drawings, toys, and love, Jack readied himself for the first official bedtime as a father. "Tell us a story," Olivia asked, already settled into her new bed in the room the 3 had helped decorate. "How about the story of the Iceman?" he suggested, sitting in an armchair between the 3 beds. "And the 3 stars who saved him," Emily added, snuggling under her favorite blanket. Jack began the tale, his gentle voice filling the room. "Once upon a time, there was a man who built an ice fort